Welcome to the Global Medical Device Podcast, where today's brightest minds in the medical device industry go to get their most useful and actionable insider knowledge direct from some of the world's leading medical device experts and companies.
You know, there are times at Greenlight Guru where I feel like I have the best job in the world. And today is one of those moments on the Global Medical Device Podcast. I get to talk to Alison Lee. Alison is the Director of Operations for a startup called Breathe 99. Now, Breathe 99 is an interesting story. They've developed a mask to help in the current pandemic needs. And it's a great story. And it didn't start as a need for a global pandemic. It actually started out of a necessity for somebody who was a runner and wanted a mask to help limit or any sort of pollution as he's running in an urban environment. And so it's just kind of interesting to see the origin story of this company and how they've pivoted and now at a point where they're making really cool product to meet really important needs. So enjoy this episode of the Global Medical Device Podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Global Medical Device Podcast. This is your host and founder at Greenlight Guru, Jon Speer. Pretty cool episode today we're going to dive into. We've got a lot of customers at Greenlight Guru that are frankly on the front lines of developing products and technologies to help during the COVID pandemic. And today, I've got the great pleasure to talk with Alison Lee. Alison is the Director of Operations for Breathe 99. Alison, welcome to the Global Medical Device Podcast.
Thanks, John. Great to be here.
All right. So for the folks that maybe don't know that much about Breathe 99, I guess that might be a good place to start. What is Breathe 99?
Sure. In short, we're a startup company based in Minneapolis that makes a high quality face mask. That filters 97 to 99% of airborne particles. Can't say we're N95 certified yet, but those are the requirements that we've designed our mask around, and something Greenlight's helping us to get there. So that's in short what we're doing and where we're trying to go.
All right. So I guess let's talk a little bit about the journey of Breathe 99. I mean, I don't know how long you've been with the company. I mean, you said it's a startup. I think it's probably been around for, I guess, how long has Breathe 99 been around?
Well, it's the idea and the prototypes, the early parts of the company have been around for several years now. Our CEO, Max, first got the idea to make this high quality respirator style mask when he lived in Singapore. And he's a runner. So he wanted to run, but there was often days where there was a lot of urban pollution and wasn't sure if it was healthy to go outside, but also couldn't find any kind of protection that he felt was adequate for someone in a smoggy city. So he was kind of thinking about that in the back of his head as, he finished his degree in mechanical design and started working at a design firm and kind of been working on the prototype of this mask that seals completely around the mouth and the nose and features high quality breathable filters. So back before the pandemic, about 2 years ago now, he and a couple friends, that's really when Breathe 99 was founded, I suppose. And so they launched a Kickstarter for the B1 mask, which was targeted at people who were concerned about urban pollution and wanted to be outside or needed to be, for example, commuting or cycling, running outside. And that Kickstarter didn't quite reach its goal. And so then it kind of remained up, in the back of his head. But then the pandemic started pretty soon thereafter. And all of a sudden, there was this really obvious, really urgent, and really serious need for high quality respiratory protection. And they had already done a lot of the work in the prototyping and user testing. And so that's when we launched the Kickstarter for the B2 mask back, I guess, in April of 2020. And that's also when I joined the company to help out on the filter design side. And so we, throughout the summer, we had 2 successful Kickstarter campaigns, raised over $750,000,
Wow.
Which really allowed us to launch the company in full. And it's kind of more the company that we are today.
Wow. I mean, that 750,000 on Kickstarter, that's impressive. I mean, obviously, the circumstances in the world were right too, but my goodness, that's amazing. So, from April till today, I mean, you've had the Kickstarter. I'm guessing you've been in production. I'm guessing your masks are available to folks, the B2 mask. Talk a little bit about what you've heard or seen, or some of I guess stories from folks that have been using your products, if you have any.
Yeah, that's what keeps us going. We love hearing about how people feel safer wearing our mask. It's allowed them to continue doing their job. And we hear from a lot of teachers, a lot of people who volunteer, who have underlying health conditions, who otherwise wouldn't feel safe, interacting with the public. And there's surprisingly to us, since we're not officially certified, but we do have quite a lot of doctors who use our mask at work, and they say that it's very comfortable compared to your typical the N95 respirator, which are not available to them, and it just allows them to continue their job and feel a lot safer than maybe the other alternatives that were available to them, like just a surgical mask that doesn't have the proper seal.
Right. Yeah. I've worked, I guess, sort of tangentially with a couple of initiatives, slightly different products, but also, those that are like pursuing, the EUA with FDA, and then also exploring N95 with, hang on, I forgot the organization.
With NIOSH.
NIOSH. I was like, yeah, it's on the tip of my tongue.
It's a lot of acronyms in our industry.
It totally is, but the whole NIOSH thing is it's a completely different path and process from dealing with the FDA. I guess I'm curious, is that something that still is on the horizon, or something that you're still pursuing at Breathe 99?
Yeah, it's definitely something we're planning for. And I'd say NIOSH is probably even the more relevant one for us, to be able to call ourselves a respirator, an N95 respirator. None of us, we're a team of 6 people. 2 of us have engineering backgrounds and kind of medical adjacent experience, but none of us have gone through a regulatory approval of a product before. So I'd say in the beginning, we were maybe a bit optimistic about how straightforward the process might be. But definitely, as we've been documenting our user needs more and exploring what all of the detailed testing and requirements would be, we've realized it is quite a longer term path that now we've been able to plan properly for and realistically for. So definitely on the horizon, that stamp of approval from NIOSH and from the FDA is really, really important for people to trust our product, to enter certain medical networks. So definitely, but at the same time, we know that right now, even without it, there's a lot of people who can really greatly benefit from our mask. And actually what we've done in lieu of, knowing that we're not going to get the NIOSH certification, that we weren't going to get it back in 2020 in the summer, we have done independent testing with the University of Minnesota. And we've published those results in a white paper so that at the very least, if someone is more scientifically minded and kind of familiar with regulations, they can go look up that white paper and, make a call for themselves if they feel comfortable using our product.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Folks, I want to remind you, I'm talking with Alison Lee. Alison is the Director of Operations for Breathe 99, and you can learn a ton more about their product by going to Breathe 99, and then 99 is 99 the number.com. So BREATHE99.com. And man, the website is super informative. There's some blog posts. There's ways to learn more about the product and fit and all that sort of thing. So really I encourage you all to check that out. I also wanted to start talking a little bit, Alison, about your Greenlight experience. And I guess before we do so, I want to remind folks that Greenlight Guru, we're here to help, whether you're developing a product to help with the pandemic or another medical device for other purposes, we're here. And I would encourage you to go to www.greenlight.guru to learn more about the medical device quality management system software platform, the only one in the market today designed specifically and only for the medical device industry by actual medical device professionals. So if you're interested in learning more about how our workflows and our team and our products and services can help you streamline your practices and ensure compliance along the way, then again, I would encourage you to go to www.greenlight.guru to learn more. All right, so Alison, you talked a little bit about being a small team, a couple with some engineering backgrounds or adjacent types of disciplines. How many of you have been through the medical device process before?
So none of us have worked directly on a product that's gone through medical device certification, but Max, our CEO, worked at a mechanical design firm for many years that worked on some medical products. So he's been around that process. And myself, the other engineer, in a previous life, I worked at a startup that was part of the electronic signature process for manufacturing regulated devices. Cool. and pharmaceuticals. So I became pretty familiar with the electronic signature regulation and the fact that the regulatory environment, but none of us have gone through it directly with the product that we've created. So all right, it's been a learning process.
Well, for sure, and I'm glad that you're going through this. I guess what I'm curious a little bit about is if you can share some of your experiences on how Greenlight has been a resource for you and the team during your journey to bring the B2 mask to market.
Sure. Yeah, we really appreciate all of the resources that Greenlight has available online, especially breaking down all the contents of the design history file. We're still kind of defining our user needs and all the design inputs and just seeing the full picture of how that's going to come together and being able to plan for what needs to link to what. And it's just helped us lay things out because, that it's so complicated and there's many ways that one might go about documenting all of these things. But the fact that just being able to link things and not getting lost in folders upon folders upon folders, that peace of mind has been really great for us. Sure. And, it's allowed us to go step by step at the pace we need.
Good. What have you found to be, I guess, most challenging in navigating the overall design and development process?
I think the fact that most of our teammates have not worked on a regulatory product, there's a lot of checks and balances that if you're not a medical device, that you don't have to take into account, like the change order process, for example. Just, you have to train people on the change order process, but you also have to first kind of teach them why it needs to exist. It seems very bureaucratic and kind of, it takes a lot of time. But so that's been you have to learn why you're learning it almost. So it's another layer to kind of introduce our team. Yeah. And change their frame of mind.
Yeah, I mean, I hear this often from startups is, when you're new to med device, I mean, it feels like, and I know you didn't exactly say this, but sometimes a little more burdensome than it needs to be. But at the same time, I mean, I have to imagine that the team very much understands the mission of Breathe 99 and the purpose of your products. And so I would imagine that, understanding the importance of a product being designed appropriately and safe and effective, that's been, helps connect the dots, so to speak. I guess, what do you think is, if you were giving advice to another startup who is, thinking about pursuing their medical device journey, do you have any tips or pointers for them?
I guess just find out as early as you can everything it's going to take. Start plotting out your user needs. And if you don't already know your users and their environment intimately, as soon as you can, go and talk to real people and find out just the entire scope of how your product is going to be used. Because, for us, we're a mask, so it's obvious to think about the person wearing the mask. But when that person is a doctor or a nurse in a hospital and they're wearing that mask that has been given to them by their employer, there's all of these other factors to consider. who makes these purchasing decisions in the hospital, who decides and who distributes and trains their employees. If there's a reusable portion of a product of our mask, there's a fabric part and then a flexible plastic part. How might that get cleaned? What are laundering processes in the hospital environment? So there's a lot of, just be aware of your scope. And you can really only do that by talking to people as soon as possible before you, I guess, make an assumption. We definitely thought that the regulatory process would be a lot faster. Maybe 6 months or something. We'll complete the paperwork. Not having done it before. And I think the more we kind of peeled the layers of the onion, so to speak, we realized there was a lot more to discover before we could go ahead and even apply.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I want to, I guess, dive a little deeper in on that last little bit that you shared. Let's first talk about the user needs side of things. I think that's really important, and I think it's a great tip for those listening. I think a lot of times we maybe don't give the user needs the time, effort, and energy that they deserve. But I have to imagine with your product, I mean, you said the founder, his first inspiration was to have a mask in a urban polluted environment so he could go running, but then you had to pivot with COVID to build a different kind of mask. Were the user needs the same? Were they different? How did that all go?
Yeah. So, I mean, and this is where you really have to talk to your users, because I mean, the functional needs are basically the same. You need the seal and the filters have to perform certain size particle to a certain percentage, but the way people are thinking about this product and the degree to which they need it to be, they need to feel the seal is 100%, and they need to understand and emotionally feel like it's protecting them, even though not all of our users are like science or engineer type people. And there's just, in the context of the pandemic, the context in which they're using our product, there's just mask overload in the media. And it's really hard for someone who's never thought about masks or respiratory protection to figure out what they need. And there's a lot of misinformation as well and conflicting advice. So we have to take that into account as well when thinking about our users in the context of a pandemic, is that there's all these heightened emotions and that's all part of their experience. And, when someone that could affect, for example, the degree to which they read our instructions, how frustrated or not they may become if they don't understand how to assemble a certain part of our mask. And even in the customer support process, and just feeling confident in our company makes someone feel confident when they're wearing our mask. And so there's this whole other layer during the pandemic that's very, very different than just selling something that'll protect you while you cycle to work.
The other thing I want to explore a little bit is your discovery about the regulatory process maybe being a little longer than and more tortuous and challenging than maybe you first thought. And I think that's a common thing. I mean, over my career, I've worked with inventors and entrepreneurs, and a lot of times at the beginning of that journey with them, they already have a prototype that's pretty far along, and granted, they may not always have design controls documented or the risk and that sort of thing, but the product essentially works or is pretty close to being a production version, if you will. And then I have been the bearer of bad news from time to time. It's like, oh well, this is a class 2 device is going to require this submission and that sort of thing, and it's going to take another 6, 9, 12 months before we get there. And that could be a little frustrating. So I guess talk a little bit about that once the team discovered that, oh wow, this regulatory side of thing is a little bit more complicated and lengthy than we thought. I got to imagine that could have been a little discouraging. So talk a little bit about that roller coaster.
Yeah, it is, I guess, a little bit discouraging at first. And most of all, it's hard to message to our followers, our customers, especially our crowdfunding backers, who also don't come from a med device background. You might think it's as straightforward as, well, how much does it cost and how long does it take them to process your application? And to explain why we actually need to do more work in the design stage and possibly do some redesigns before submitting our product, a medical version of our product. It's without getting into too much detail, it's hard to kind of justify why we're seen to be taking so long. But on the flip side, we have, because of the pandemic and in talking to our users, there are a lot of really great use cases for our mask that don't require the NIOSH approval. So we've been able to find plenty of good uses for our mask in the meantime. And while we do the proper diligence and kind of reset our expectations. And
sure.
On that, yeah.
Breathe 99, did you go the EUA route?
No, so in the end...
And I guess let me clarify for folks, EUA stands for Emergency Use Authorization. It's a provision that is, part of FDA for times of need, like we're in right now from a pandemic perspective. And it just is it's a different path to get some level of regulatory approval for products that meet the global need. So anyway, I interrupted you,
sure.
But why was EUA not necessarily a path that made sense?
So this is again from all the feedback we got from our crowdfunding backers who are the first users to get our mask. There's a few foundational things that we want to change about our mask before we put it forward as the med version. The big thing is sizing. That we noted that our mask is designed as a one size fits most mask, and we've found that it fits typically people whose faces are on the smaller side or who are tolerant of it. It's quite a compact mask, which is part of the design. That it's not this huge thing on your face, but some people do have a preference for it feeling a mask that feels very roomy and large. So we would like to do a bit more work and research on the sizing before submitting for any kind of regulatory approval, even in EUA, just so that it can fit a wide enough portion of the population. And in doing that, we're also realizing just how difficult a challenge it is to fit around the nose and mouth area of the human face, and just how varied the geometries are between people. So we're working with this lab at the University of Minnesota called the Human Dimensioning Lab, and that's pretty much what they said. Is this is of all of the human dimension problems to solve for things that are worn by humans, wearing something on your face that needs to seal around the nose area is the number one challenge. So
for sure,
that's why we want to take our time and do it properly and offer something that'll fit a wide range of people.
Yeah, so you're just being very deliberate about the entire process. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Alison, as we wrap up our conversation today, any other tips, pointers, message that you want the listeners to hear before we call today's episode a wrap?
Yeah, I guess we're optimistic now that we've noticed lately in the last couple of weeks. There's been a renewed media attention on the need to wear a mask, and I guess the current advice seems to be double masking, but I think we're trying to push the conversation further in that just wearing two masks is not necessarily better, or it's not better by a lot. And there's been a huge call for a mask that actually is better. And we think we're working towards that, and we understand what those requirements are. So we're looking forward to talking to policymakers. We're looking for investment in our company to help us go forward with design changes and regulatory approval. So we're optimistic about how this year is going to go and develop, because we feel like we're kind of reaching a turning point in the public understanding and awareness of of masks and regulatory protections. So we look forward to being leaders in that space and to being part of the solution and to hopefully end this pandemic sooner rather than later.
Okay. And Alison, if folks want to help Breathe 99 or learn more about your venture and your products and your path, how do you suggest they get a hold of you? Do they just go to the Breathe 99 website and fill out a contact form, or is there some other way that makes more sense?
Yeah, you can always email us hello@breathe99. And actually, if you're listening to this podcast, you can just email me, Alison, ALISON, @breathe99.com. Or, we're on social media too. You can tweet at us, follow us on Instagram. It's not too hard to get in touch with us.
All right, folks. If exciting company and really cool product, and I mean this as a compliment. It's a very simple design, and I think that's what's important about a lot of products these days. Is simple oftentimes does mean better, because to some of the things that Alison shared with us a little bit earlier, sometimes you get into certain product spaces or certain environments or circumstances and situations, and maybe stress levels are high and or people are frustrated about other things. So if they can instantly see your product and understand how it works and it's just intuitive, it's just going to be a better design. So take that to heart. I want to thank Alison
Definitely.
Lee. Yeah, absolutely. I want to thank Alison Lee. Alison is the Director of Operations for Breathe 99. Again, check it out, breathe99.com, to learn a whole bunch more about their products. It's really cool. And again, thank you all so much for being loyal listeners of the Global Medical Device Podcast, the #1 podcast in the medical device industry today. Continue to share this with your friends and colleagues. And of course, if you're so compelled, I would also encourage you to go to www.greenlight.guru to learn again about the medical device quality management system software platform that we have had in the market for, it's been, I think, 6 years now. So crazy times, but we're working with companies like Breathe 99 and others all over the world who are making a difference and improving the quality of life. So again, go check that out. As always, this is your host and founder at Greenlight Guru, Jon Speer, and you have been listening to the Global Medical Device Podcast.